Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning again and welcome to our first workshop of the 5th ICAO World Aviation Forum Innovation Fair. My name is Nivin Murat, Associate Analysis Officer with the Air Navigation Bureau. I will be your moderator this morning. We are delighted to have great panelists from the industry and a regulator to discuss innovation in aviation. Please join me to welcome our distinguished guest for this workshop, Ms. Natalia Bacharnikova, President of Flight Data Technologists.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Abdul Aziz Kunche, Chief Executive Officer of Drone Africa Service. Mr. Rodrigo Escobar, Chief Financial Officer of Strategic Aeronautical Management. Mr. Yves Yu, President and Chief Technological Officer of Memotech. We are honored to have Ms. Carmen Marco, International Affairs Advisor, Aerospace Sector, North American Markets for Quebec Innovation. The workshop's objectives are to discuss the challenges faced by the industry and regulators when dealing with innovation. In more details, we want to discuss the following questions. For the industry, what challenges you had to overcome to be where you are right now? And what new challenges do you foresee in the future? What do we need to easily enable innovation in aviation? What are the biggest challenges in adopting innovation? What are the economical and societal benefits of innovation? For the regulators, in the context of innovation, what are for you the key elements states and international organizations should be involved in? What lessons states and aviation authorities have learned in the past 10 years while dealing with the fast development of emerging technologies in aviation? In a fast-paced environment, how can regulators keep up with the pressure from the industry to certify or regulate their latest innovations? As a regulator, how do you deal with the lack of resources and still ensure the safety of passengers? Ms. Bacharnikova, can you share with us what were the challenges that your company had to overcome to be where it is right now?
The biggest challenge was the development and implementation of a real...
No. Please press the...
No?
There you go.
The biggest challenge was the development and implementation of a real-time flight data transmission system, either technologically or from regulatory perspective. Due to our rich experience in flight data recorders and monitoring and data analysis, the technology side was actually easier to get organized. But the certification of the new system, which was developed based on ICAO regulations, as a document 10,000 and track tracing aircraft, was the biggest challenge for us. We are still on the way of certification of this system. That's everything from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bacharnikova. Mr. Knuche, how do you manage to recruit, develop, and retain talent so that your company can continue to innovate?
Oui, merci beaucoup pour cette question. Donc, dans le cadre de mon entreprise qui est basée au Niger,
My company, which is based in Niger, I think that this type of problem could arise. But what we have to keep in mind is that there are many young people who are more and more interested in the new technologies, and especially in drone technology. And so there are lots of young people interested in this. And they are taking the step to come see us to see how they can also play a role in making use of their talents. And so I don't think that we'll have the same problems as the other companies in Europe, the problems that they are dealing with right now.
Thank you, Mr. Kunce. Mr. Escobar, what are the biggest challenges in adopting innovation in the highly regulated and political environment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be in the ICAO's World Aviation Forum. Basically, I would like to start with a statement. Innovation starts with planning. So when we were facing challenges during the aviation master plans in developing countries, we found that there's a lot of challenges to implement the planning innovation of the aviation industry. I'd like to mention 3 challenges that we normally face. Challenge number 1 is you have to convince and have the acceptance at the political level of the authorities. You have to talk with the civil aviation authorities, you have to talk with the head of transportation sector, and convince them that planning in the aviation industry is necessary. The aviation industry will have an impact on the economy, will have an impact on the commerce, tourism, and at the end of the day, it will have an impact in people's quality of life. So that's why you have to tell them aviation is important. You have to innovate, you have to invest in aviation. It will improve the country. Even though the authorities, you know, they have a lot of priorities. They have education, health, security, but you have to demonstrate and have the political will to implement the planning and innovation in the aviation industry. So that's the challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 that we find is that any solution, innovation, improvement, will need resources, will need investments. So normally the authorities should be able to get the resources from somewhere to finance the innovation and all the development of the aviation industry. That's why we believe that ICAO role is crucial, because ICAO is the link between the resources and the countries. But for that, they will need clear goals, clear programs, and good planning. So that's basically the challenge number 2. Challenge number 3 is implementation. When you have to implement the planning and the aviation master plans and the innovation programs, etc., you have to do the field work. You have to work with the local people, local culture. You have to adapt to the local culture. And sometimes it's a challenge because all the systems are outdated. You have to update the information systems, the navigation systems, even sometimes the infrastructure is not there. So there's a lot to adaptability that you need to implement the innovation, especially in developing countries. But we believe that with good planning, clear goals, programs, and resources, we think that anything is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. Mr. Yves Youp, what lessons your company learned during the last years that still apply to today's environment?
Yes, good morning, everybody. So to start, in order to set the stage and put things into context, I'd like first to briefly talk about what we do, Memotech, and give you some background information about our role in ANSP network modernization. Memotech is involved in building air traffic control networks. Memotech designs and manufactures network equipment that connect airports and remote towers and terminals, such as remote VHF radios, air-to-ground communication, weather and radar stations, to the national or regional air traffic control center. The Memotech equipment provides the connectivity between the terminals and the different transmission networks and ensures that the information delivered meets the ANSP strict requirements in terms of availability, reliability, and quality of service, like high voice quality, no loss of information. So we are, by the way, we're pleased also to be a sponsor and a booth here. So you can visit us in booth 35 and the 4th floor, just next to the elevator. So traditionally, air traffic control networks have been using dedicated circuits, leased line, based on TDM technology, with dedicated redundant communication resources that are allocated for each application and connection. This technology has provided ANSP with the required reliability and quality expected for those mission-critical applications. However, due to the combined pressure of A, the obsolescence of legacy TDM equipment and telecommunication services, B, the demand for higher bandwidth capacity to new applications, generating massive amount of information. We've seen yesterday and we heard about AI coming in. And C is the need for more agile networks while reducing operating costs. Most ANSP have evolved or are evolving their network to IP-based technology. It is such network evolution and technology migration that Memotech has been helping ANSPs around the world to achieve. So what are the challenges we have faced together with the ANSPs during this journey? The first lesson is that technology cycles in telecommunications are much shorter than the typical investment cycle of government-based ANSP organizations. This means that both existing legacy and new IP-based technology need to coexist for a while. In particular, they need to be managed and communicate together in a seamless manner in order to ensure continuity of operation and of the applications supported by the network. This should be planned in the design of the network evolution, as mentioned by the precedent speaker, and the choice of suppliers. It also means that the suppliers of the newer equipment and technology being introduced in the network must be evaluated in terms of commitment for long-term support and maintenance in order to avoid the risk of obsolescence. Also, vendors' financial stability is a key component of such evaluation to avoid support and supply disruption. Budget takes time to be allocated, and NASP do not want to come back to their government for asking for the same budget twice. Finally, the chosen solution should have the means and capacity to support future requirements of ANSP with regards to new application in terms of capacity, transmission technologies, and networking architecture. The second lesson we learn is about business continuity. When replacing existing TDM network technology by the new IP technology, the level of service should at least improve, if not stay the same. This means same or improved reliability, same or improved quality, etc. The network KPIs required for air traffic management, also called ATM-grade networks, have been enjoyed for years by ANSP using TDM-based technology, to the point that it is often overlooked and taken for granted. But IP-based network and equipment like switches and routers are not by nature ATM grade, since they have not been designed with the specifics of ATM application in mind. So much attention and care should be taken in the design of the network, the choice of the vendor solution and equipment, in order to guarantee ANSPs they will enjoy the same or enhanced ATM grade network that they have been enjoying so far, whatever the transmission infrastructure and technology being used, be it satellite, leased line, microwave, or IP/MPLS service providers. The third lesson is about human behavior and human being. It is critical that the people in the organization from top to bottom who are running and operating the network, as well as the people making the investment decisions and choice of vendor solutions, are aware and understand the new technology being put in place, so that they can make the right decision and at the same time willfully embrace this new technology. Therefore, ANSP customer support, training, and education are keys. In that particular role and mission, the role of ICAO training and ICAO organization in actually disseminating the new technology information is particularly important. In conclusion, when undergoing a technology change and doing a technology migration, choosing the right partner, whether it is the OEM vendor and system integrators, are key elements of success. Memotech is a subsidiary of Comtech Telecommunication Corp., which is a public company supplying networking solutions to government and defense organizations around the world, has been working closely with NASP through leading landmark system integrator in order to address and meet those requirements. As a result, Memotech has helped and enabled ANSPs in more than 50 countries to migrate seamlessly and safely their network to modern IP packet-based technology increase their network performance, implement new services, and reduce cost, all while maintaining ATM-grade quality and reliability for these mission-critical services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yup. Ms. Marco, you are representing the Quebec government. In the context of innovation, what are for you the key elements states and international organizations should be involved in?
Merci beaucoup, Nevin.
Thank you very much, Naveen. Good morning to everyone. The Economics and Innovation Ministry of Quebec would like to extend its thanks to ICAO for giving us this opportunity to be a true collaborator in the holding of this event. And I'd also like to thank the distinguished delegates from the participating states for coming yesterday and hearing the presentations by Quebec companies which attended the event and who are also exhibiting outside of the room on levels 4 and 1 of the conference block in the building. And finally, I'd like to express my thanks to the ICAO Secretariat for organizing this event. And I'm grateful to have interpretation as well. It's good to know that the interpreters are back there helping us through our work. Before going any farther, I would like to highlight the fact that in aerospace, research and innovation is at the core of our work, and Quebec is very proud of what's being done. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about the aerospace industry in Quebec. We stand out in our innovation and its pole of excellence internationally. I'd like, if I may, to give you some figures. $1 billion are invested every year in research and development in Quebec, which represents 70% of total Canadian expenditures. Innovation mobilizes over 13,000 engineers and scientists in the Quebec aerospace sector. The aerospace industry is the cutting edge of Quebec research and development for manufacturing, and Bombardier Aeronautique is one of the main investors in Canadian research and development. The excellence of innovation and research in aerospace in Quebec is focused on the Greater Montreal area. And we have a number of business centers of excellence, including the Consortium for Research and Innovation in Aerospace in Montreal. You might have heard their presentation yesterday in CR3. The president of that consortium gave you a good idea of what we do. And as he rightly said, this really is a driving force behind many research and development initiatives by the Quebec government. And Greater Montreal also has a number of universities, 7 universities that are actively participating in research, and 10 research centers that are world-renowned. Having said that, what we would like for states to do is to look at applied research in a collaborative fashion. This is essential to rise to the new challenges of the day. Collaborative research projects are an excellent way to meet the challenges before society, which are multifaceted, as we learned yesterday from the presentations. And they're often multidisciplinary and cross-cutting. And this is why the Quebec government is partnering with the scientific community so as to create the necessary incentives. To that end, we believe it is important for our government and the other governments attending today to support bold projects and capacity building and promote partnerships and collaboration that involve many stakeholders. We want to develop skills and pursuit of common shared goals. In Quebec, we have a history of strong cooperation between industry and academia. The Quebec government recognized this need decades ago and created nonprofit entities such as the Consortium for Aerospace Research and Innovation, created in 2002 to stimulate collaborative research led by all kinds of companies with the participation of universities and research centers. And thanks to CLIAC, once again, I referred to the presentation given yesterday. Companies have access to renowned researchers and projects, and the R&D budgets are often increased. Researchers enjoy financial support from a number of different sources and are able to pursue technological advancement. This environment is conducive to competitive initiatives in aerospace. We have 9 sectors of research and development, including aerospace, and they are creating an ecosystem for collaborative innovation that serves the strategic objectives of the economy. These sectoral entities were designated by the government of Quebec for the purposes of funding research and development, and I can give you a few figures. There are 150 projects being carried out for a total value of $177 million and an estimated value of $15 million for projects in the pipeline. Moreover, there are 82 companies that are members of this group and 23 universities and research centers. Quebec researchers and companies in the aerospace sector have many opportunities for international cooperation in research and development initiatives. And these partnerships build on existing knowledge and are able to move forward faster. The knowledge acquired in Quebec is made available to international companies, enabling small technology companies in Quebec to join in the economy. And it's a two-way street, which is especially valuable for Quebec, which does not always wait to have a critical mass of researchers compared to other countries that they cooperate with. Now, ICAO always encourages development of best practices, and we can give you an example of one success story. You might have been reading the news recently, and there's a very effective cooperation between Japan and Quebec right now. An initiative was announced this week. Mitsubishi Aircraft is opening a research and development center in Boisbriand, which is very close to here. And the Mitsubishi Aerospace Wing will be investing $135 million to create this R&D center, and we're expecting that it will create 250 new jobs in the Montreal region. The new Montreal Space Jet Center will be supporting the design and approval of regional jets being built by Mitsubishi Aircraft. So this is one example of a collaborative model, and you heard about more yesterday. We have SAF Plus, the biofuel initiative. It involves a number of aerospace industries in Quebec, and they have been successful in many areas. And if you want to learn more, there's a booth on the first floor. And to highlight this initiative, we have about 30 international offices with Quebec delegations working together with our Foreign Ministry and Investment Quebec. And so this is a good example, once again, of fruitful cooperation. Thank you very much.
Ms. Marco, I would like now to ask Mr. Kunche, what are the key elements smaller companies need to become innovative?
Merci.
Thank you. In my company, to really be up to speed with the latest technologies. We mainly try to listen to the market. We are focusing on the African market and agriculture, mapping, research. We work a lot with research entities, and we are striving to adapt our products and services to the demand. So I think that is a key factor when it comes to innovation. We are also investing a great deal in R&D, and a lot of the profits in our company are reinvested in research and development so as to bring to market new products that meet the market needs. To give you an example, in agriculture, we have been trying to make drones that perform better depending on the climate. In Niger, we are looking for new skills and bringing on board skilled engineers, agronomists. And as I've always said, we need to listen to the market. And we've been investing a lot in training as well to bring skills up to date in line with new technologies, especially drone technology. This technology is fast-paced, and we need to always be ready to adapt. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunce. Mr. Escobar, what do we need to easily enable innovation in aviation?
Thank you. I would say one word: harmonization. We need to harmonize to support innovation. We know that the aviation industry is highly regulated, right? But we found that highly regulated environments allows efficiency. Mutual support among states and regions and sharing and innovating ideas require that somehow the technologies must be similar. If different countries use different technologies, then it gets very difficult to innovate. But if the regulations starts with the countries and they make that the technology is similar because of the regulation, then it gets easier to implement the innovation. And of course, to innovate, good planning is key. There's no innovation without planning. Otherwise, you would go everywhere, the goals won't be met, etc. So harmonization and planning, I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. My last question is for Mr. Yub. Mr. Yub, do you foresee any challenges related to new emerging technologies that will impact the future of air traffic management? Due to the time restriction, I will please kindly ask you to restrict yourself to 5 minutes.
Yes, this time I'll be much shorter, actually 2-3 minutes. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak again. I believe that, so I've noted 3 challenges going back to kind of the same points that I touched base before. Believe that one of the main ongoing challenge of NASP with regards to telecommunication technologies is the technology cycle. Because of the necessary certification process and what's thought based about harmonization and regulations, which are also required, taking also into account the budget cycle of government based on NASP organization, the overall NASP investment cycle is much longer than the telecom or IT technology cycle. This is an issue that was also mentioned yesterday in one of the panel. Besides the challenge related to faster adoption of new technology, there is also, at the other end of the cycle, the risk of obsolescence. So obsolescence may apply to the equipment supplied by vendors, with the issue of maintenance, support, repair, but it also applies to telecommunication provider services. I will take just one example. The challenge that was faced recently by the FAA with AT&T decisions followed by all other US operators, to decommission their copper lease line services that were used by the FAA. So effectively, this cycle is one of the challenges. Managing these cycles, difference of time, is one of the key main challenge I foresee with regards to innovation. The second challenge facing the introduction of new technologies is that often new technology focus solely on the future and tend to consider that everything is new, meaning a greenfield operation. Well, that is not the reality. There are processes in place, quality insurance concepts which need to be met. They are often tied up also to the technology itself that is in place, so they need to be adapted to the new technology, or else the new technology needs to have some adaptation mechanism to handle these processes, existing processes and KPIs with regards to network. Often new technologies don't take enough into account legacy and what is currently in place. Being focused on the future, they don't take the time to implement the necessary gateways between the old and the new in their fast evolution pace, so that a smooth transition can take place, both from the point of view of the technology and the human organization. I will take two examples. The first, these taken from air traffic control networks. The first is related to VHF radio equipment. And so migration to VHF over IP technology is not a one-time swap-out event. Legacy VHF using analog interfaces located in remote stations will remain here for a while the VHF control center, called VCCS, and the core transmission network move to IP. So the network migration solution selected should take into account the existing analog VHF radios and allow those to coexist and communicate seamlessly with the new IP-based VCCS and transmission network. The second example is related to the network transmission facility. As I mentioned before, the example of AT&T decommissioning lease line. NSP uses a variety of different transmission means simultaneously to ensure network resilience and availability. In particular, combination of satellite and terrestrial networks. Those different network types should be transparent to the applications, radar, or VHF. So how to ensure this is still the case when introducing a single unified IP-based network across those different communication facilities, and at the same time, that the same or better KPIs are still met with the new IP network as to what was provided before with the existing TDM infrastructure, in connection with VHF radio and radar information mission-critical application. This is two examples of challenges that are facing where introducing new technology. The last point, and maybe the most important, is something inherent to human being. It's called resistance to change. We all know about that. At that point, education of the workforce is therefore paramount, so that the new technology can be embraced and deployed successfully. And I think that these forums are also instrumental in that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hupe. I would like to ask Ms. Bacharnikova, what new challenges do you foresee in the future for flight data technologies?
Thank you, Ms. Murat. The challenges we foresee is regarding to our technology we are trying to implement based on ICAO recommendations, and new technology we're currently developing for drone detection and unidentified object within low Earth space. We foresee that the dialogue between regulatory authorities and manufacturers like ourselves should be more vivid. We believe that the fair innovation like we have currently is a good actually step forward, and but we also need to implement a missing unified regulations as well as technology safety solution between the words of civil aviation, general aviation, and unmanned vehicle. Because currently it looks like it's all regulated separately. We believe there is a necessity to create one big system which will be interacting between each other. Currently, we see that there is a lot of innovation developing going on in drones, and every creator of drones creating their own unmanned system management, traffic management system. There is no system created on the level of civil aviation authority. And we understand that still debate who is responsible for that. And while we are debating, we are experiencing drone attacks, which is going in our real life already. So we believe we need to speed up a little bit of this process of debating who is responsible and create real regulations. We will be regulating and talking to each other between drone producers, between people who are driving the drones, and also general aviation. General aviation, as you know, is experiencing a very high level of safety, accident, incident, and safety problems. They are 40% higher than commercial aviation. And we see it's not addressed for years, and we would like to drag the attention of regulators and probably create some system which will help to regulate general aviation. So the offer we have currently is to create a unified system which will be combining the traffic management for manned, unmanned aircraft, general aviation, and drones together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Bacharnikova, and thank you to our great panelists for those very insightful opinions and views. Please let us give them a round of applause. This concludes our first workshop. The next workshop will start at 11:40 in this room. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning again, and welcome to our second workshop of the 5th ICAO World Aviation Forum Innovation Fair. My name is Nivin Murad, Associate Analysis Officer with the Air Navigation Bureau. I will be your moderator for this morning. We are delighted again to have great panelists from the industry and a regulator to discuss innovation in aviation. Please join me to welcome our distinguished guest for this workshop, Ms. Valérie Gouignon, Vice President, Environmental Policies at Safran. Dr. Saran Touré, co-founder of Notos Technologists. Mr. Patrick Parny, Marketing Director for Dassault Aviation. Mr. Dan Chesvonka, International Representative of Zipline, Rwanda. We are also honored to have the Director General of the Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority, Mr. Sila Udahemuka. The workshop objectives are to discuss the challenges faced by the industry and regulators when dealing with innovation. In more details, we want to discuss the following questions. For the industry, what challenges you had to overcome to be where you are right now? And what new challenges do you foresee in the future? What do we need to easily enable innovation in aviation? What are the biggest challenges in adopting innovation? What are the economical and societal benefits of innovation? For the regulators, in the context of innovation, What are for you the key elements states and international organizations should be involved in? What lessons states and aviation authorities have learned in the past 10 years while dealing with the fast development of emerging technologies in aviation? In a fast-paced environment, how can regulators keep up with the pressure from the industry to certify or regulate their latest innovations? As a regulator, how do you deal with the lack of resources and still ensure the safety of passengers? I will now invite each panelist to share their point of view. Ms. Guignon, Safran developed rocket engine for the Ariane 6 launch vehicle, but it is also currently developing a small electric motor for 2 to 6 passengers aircraft. Can the lessons learned from developing the rocket engines be transported to electric motor even if they are completely different products?
Okay, thank you for your question, and good morning to everyone. So with this question, I like the question, and we discussed it before. I find it quite original because what I like in the question is that it points something that the Safran Group is quite proud of. With our products, we cover the highest possible range of propulsion thrust. From a few grams, we make the propulsion of satellites, and the thrust for a satellite is just a few grams, up to 650 tons for the boosters of the Ariane 5 space rocket. And in between these two, we have all the range of thrust of our aircraft and helicopter engines. Well, you're mentioning two extremely different products. On one side, you have a rocket, the propulsion of a rocket, which is an object that is going to have quite a short life, but a very stressed life, with a production rate that is rather small, slow, and it's using liquid and solid propellants. On the other side, you have electric propulsion, distributed electric propulsion for vehicles that are supposed to carry people and hopefully with a much higher production rate. So these are totally different products, different technologies, different markets, different customers, different industrial logics. So when you told me about this question, I thought, what is the link between these two products, apart from the fact that the Safran Group makes them? The link is the technology edge. It is really the technology edge and the technology risk, the level of technology and innovation we put in it, and the level of risk that we take. And each time we develop a new technology, something that is very new, we take a risk, we take a technology risk and a financial risk. And in terms of lessons learned, I think that a large group like Safran, with all its experience, all its maturity in terms of knowing how to do research, technology development, industrialization, we have this experience that we can apply to our future products, which will be very different from the previous ones.
Thank you, Ms. Guignon. Dr. Torouet, my next question is for you. What challenges you had to overcome to be where you are right now, and what new challenges do you foresee in the future?
I represent a different vertical, but also a very hot topic today in the aviation industry. We do drones, like Zip9. And depending on who you talk to, this can be a good or a very bad thing. And I guess that's why I'm here on the panel today. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. And I'm also very humbled to be sharing it with such a name in the industry. saying that there have been tremendous innovation happening for the commercial sector for unmanned systems. However, and the truth of the matter is that having an aeronautical background, I appreciate that we need to understand how to integrate those drones in the current framework. That being either walking or flying, we need to make the airspace safer, and even more so in the future. And at Notice, our technology is very particular. So one of the main challenges, and actually the big one, are regulations, how to navigate them, how to implement them with our technology. And unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that we are innovators, and with the technology nowadays, innovation is happening at a tremendous speed. But the regulation is not moving towards that same speed, and it's taking time. And I think there are two reasons for that. The first main issue is a communication issue. The communication channel is broken, or it's not there yet. I say yet because we are here today. It means that there is conversation starting to happen. And that needs to be changed or reinvented somehow. The second one is to do with education. Not education to the end user as per se, because that's a completely different subject, but educating the regulator. Again, with drones, innovation is important, but at the end of the day, regulations are the one thing that make or break us at the end of the day. So the regulator needs to understand, he or she needs to understand what needs to be changed and how to change it, because without it, you cannot address the need itself. So all in all is to say that there needs to be some kind of sandbox or system where innovators can shiftly start communication with regulators if they wanted to introduce a new innovation. And so they know what to do, how to do it, how long it will take, who to do it, who has to do it, so on and so forth. But most importantly, a sandbox or a system with those two components would help the regulators understand what needs to be done if an innovation is being put into place that doesn't necessarily have its ecosystem already available. And that would help the regulators pivot as much as they can with what they have and just have a sustainable change in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tourier. Mr. Parny, what challenges Dassault Aviation had to overcome to be where you are right now, and what new challenges do you foresee in the future?
So, good morning, everybody. Let me first introduce my company. Dassault Aviation is a French company with different subsidiaries worldwide and many in the US, and building fighters and business jets. Rafale and Mirage fighters, for example, are Dassault aircraft. The workforce is about 10,000 people, and with a significant part in terms of engineering and innovation. So innovation is a key word in our business, both for military and civil activities. Building a business jet is a real challenge, so even if the aircraft is small compared to commercial aircraft, the performance and the technology are at least at the same level, and we have to innovate if we want to maintain our competitive advantage every year. So safety, flexibility, comfort, quality, and environmental minimization, impact minimization are the key requirements, and we need to innovate in order to keep the advantage in all these fields. So let me give you some examples. For example, years ago, it was in the middle of the 70s, we introduced a specific system called the head-up in commercial aircraft. It was the first one coming from our military experience, and then now it is now a standard equipment for all the aviation, and it improves significantly the safety. And if you have seen in our booth, so since that date, we have made significant improvement with what we call today Falcon Eye. It's an advanced head-up with virtual visualization and virtual terrain presented in the head-up that help to make some, to give the pilot very good visibility of the environment, even in bad conditions. So this is a significant step, and progress has been made, and we think that this will be adopted in the coming years also in commercial aviation. More generally speaking, we have continuously introduced significant number of innovation in the aircraft cockpit and in the field of man-to-machine interface. For example, 15 years ago, a new standard for aircraft cockpit, more simplified, integrated in order to improve the safety, to simplify the man-to-machine interface, to reduce the pilot workload, so still the same requirement in terms of safety. Another step was the digital flight control system 10 years ago. So as you can see, a lot of continuous improvements. Also on the aircraft itself, this is not limited to electronic system, but on the aircraft itself also we have continuous improvement. For example, for the structure with use of composite materials, and in terms of aerodynamics, also development of tools that can be used today in other industrial sectors. So this is also continuous innovation. Another field also is very important for us, where innovation is important, is the field of design tools and industrial processes. There have been many innovations over the last 30 years in this field. Aviation industry was the first to make extensive use of 2D and 3D modelization software. And in Dassault, we have been using these tools since 30 years now. At the beginning, the idea was to replace the engineers' traditional tools, such as drawings, in order to ease the configuration management. You don't have to redesign everything when you want to make a modification, and to ease also the communication among the different community that want to share the information. After that, there were another step with what we call the PLM, Product Life Cycle Management Tool, a decade ago, where it had been made possible to combine all design, engineering, product, and support in a single database. And now we are reaching a new era, one that emphasizes a fully collaborative development approach between all the actors of the same program. Then this will be a true cultural revolution in the way our organization operates. So, as you can see, innovation is permanent and is key in business aviation, and with a lot of benefits in all other industrial sectors. And if it be the same in the future, if we want to maintain our competitive advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parny. Mr. Cheswonka, international representative of Zipline Rwanda. I apologize, there was a last-minute swap of panelists. As far as I understand, you are delivering blood with drones to hospitals. Correct me if I'm wrong. So my question for you will be, when you are using drone to deliver life-saving products like blood to hospitals, did you experience any challenges when setting up this service? And do you foresee any issues to expand the use of drones to other medical applications?
Thank you. Thank you for the thank you all for having me today. It's an honor to be here, and I think it's a real testament to where aviation is headed when I, from a small drone company, can be seated side by side the Director General of one of my regulators. I think building a a good working relationship is vital to making this happen. Just to give you a little background about what Zipline does, we're a small drone company. We started operating in Rwanda in August 2016. We started delivering to a small number of hospitals and health facilities. We've done over 20,000 commercial deliveries now, which is about 34,000 plus units of blood. And we've also, in December last year, expanded to deliver various medicines, medical products, small devices, vaccines, and the like. We carry about a 2-kilogram payload, and we can serve facilities about 80 kilometers away from our distribution center. In Rwanda, we can serve almost the entire country from 2 facilities. But you know, this was not an easy endeavor by any means. And we actually, you know, I tell people. Drones get a lot of the press, but drones, we're not a drone company per se, we're a medical logistics company, and we just happen to use drones because we think that it's the most efficient way to deliver. Having said that, you know, to do so requires a massive involvement with lots of different stakeholders. I mean, it's not just the RCAA that we work with, but the Rwanda Ministry of Health, Biomedical Center, the Rwanda Development Board, ICT and Innovation, the Air Force, the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning, all those agencies, and in the health facilities themselves, we have to coordinate with. And so to figure out how to do that in a fast way, you know, to deliver like life-saving or important medical products is certainly a challenge. But what we found is, you know, like any relationship, like good communication is the key, and you know, making sure that we bring everyone to the table is very important. For example, you know, we're obviously not the only airspace user, and while we segregate airspace from manned air traffic, it's still important to be transparent to other operators. And so, you know, there is a commercial helicopter operation in Rwanda as well called ICAO Aviation, and so, you know, we coordinate flights with them as well. So, you know, while it's certainly been a challenge to figure out how to handle the medical logistics piece, it's also been a very big challenge to handle the aerospace piece. But it's taught us a lot, you know, gathering operational data over the last 3.5 years that I think has been helpful not only for us but for the regulators to make really, informed decisions about, you know, what they will allow in their airspace. And so showing that we can do things safely and at scale, that's the next big piece. Is like, you know, it's one thing if you can do, you know, a small volume of flights and not crash. It's another thing to do, you know, hundreds of flights a day without crashing. And so even when we designed, you know, the aircraft itself, we didn't start out to be an aircraft manufacturer. So, you know, we're both a manufacturer and an operator, but only because we had to be. We started even using a Pixahawk flight controller, which is an open source controller, but it was just not reliable enough. And so we would run lots of, you know, hundreds of thousands of simulations, and it would have a lot of errors. So we had to design our own flight controllers, you know, from the ground up. So finding something that can handle, you know, tens of thousands of flights, you know, per month is a much different challenge than trying to fly, you know, a dozen times per month. And then, you know, discussing things with regulators in a way that like shows them what our technology is, so that they can make really, you know, informed decisions. Is important. We also have to deal a lot with, you know, how you handle medical records and reporting. That's not drone related, but that's a huge part of what we do. And we employ as many pharmacists and medical technicians as we do drone operators. So, you know, that doesn't get a lot of the press, but that's a core part of our service. And I think this is a fundamental difference from a lot of other drone companies that I meet and who I often tell, you know, it's awesome that you have this product, but you know, don't be a product looking for a solution, you know, a solution looking for a problem. Instead, figure out what the problem is and then design to solve that problem. And that's, you know, that's sort of the approach that we took when we saw that, you know, because of the topography of Rwanda, there, you know, it's difficult to get things to hospitals quickly. Oftentimes, in certain cases, like rare blood products aren't stocked at hospitals. Plasma and platelets equipment are not kept at small facilities. So those things just really aren't available on a widespread basis. And so, you know, we had to decide, okay, how do we handle those products, and then can we get them to people, you know, in a quick amount of time, so that a doctor and a driver doesn't have to leave the hospital instead of providing care for patients and spend, you know, 2 to 4 hours driving to go pick up the products for those patients. And I think, about a third of the deliveries that we do are emergency situations. So, that makes a really big difference in the care of patients in rural areas. And, the last thing I'll mention is, the musician Bono from U2 joined our board recently. I think we made an announcement last week, but I guess being a songwriter, he was able to encapsulate it the way that none of us had before, but he said, where you live shouldn't determine whether you live. And that's a really core, fundamental idea that we hold to when we think about, aircraft that we design and products that we deliver. But, finding a regulatory pathway has been very difficult in many countries. And thankfully, Rwanda is, I would say, the leader of innovation in Africa right now. And, they took a chance on us, for sure. And, we have a responsibility to perform and live up to, their expectations of us. So it's a really big challenge, but it's a really fun challenge, too. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Cheswonka. Director General Udahemuka from the Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority, what challenges or struggles did you have to overcome as a regulator to help develop drone services for healthcare? Do you foresee any other in the future?
Thank you very much for inviting us to this innovation fair. We appreciate being part of this ICAO World Aviation Forum, and we are going to share experience. Like the former president of South Africa said, Nelson Mandela, that it is only impossible until you do it. It was indeed very impossible in the beginning. It's no longer impossible because we did it. It's also very interesting sitting on this table as a regulator with people who really feel very uncomfortable with us. But I want to assure you that it's possible to work with innovators and make use of your innovations and ideas in improving the well-being of our nations and our people. Coming from an environment where innovation is embraced at all levels in my country, it was a blessing for me as a regulator. In the beginning, I thought I was going to earn an SSC for my country. And to be honest, he was very modest, so I was the only troublemaker in the room. Until I later on got to be convinced that this was actually going to work. But bottom line, the success of what we did is anchored on 4 things. And maybe it's because of our history as a country. It may work for us, it may not work for others. But it worked for us because our way of doing things will only start at collaboration at all levels. But this collaboration also kicks in after identifying a need, and a need that would be addressed to enhance the strategies of our nation. So Rwanda is a country, a very tiny, smaller country in the heart of the continent, which depends on agriculture at 90% of the population involved in agriculture. And agriculture contributes 13% to our GDP. And it's a country whose terrain ranges from between 1,000 meters above the ground and 4,500 meters above the ground. It's not a very easy terrain to operate in. So this is a country which wanted to ensure that agriculture as a key sector is promoted, but also because 90% of her people are involved in agriculture, health was going to be very important. And it was going to be very important because the terrain wasn't very easy. So there was a user case assessment by a country. So all stakeholders come together and say, how do we ensure timely, sustainable health accessibility to our people? This is how this idea of using drone delivery of medical services, by the way, they do not only do blood, they do a wide range of medical supplies to all our hospitals, dispensaries, and medical centers and clinics, the whole country. So it's a long journey that starts way back in 2014. So down the road, for the last 5 years, we start with the Ministry of Health requesting us to look into this. And the answer was no, because there is no technical guidance material that governs this. We said no because we don't have any regulations. Annex 2 is very shallow on the mention of autonomous. So we said forget. But they insisted. And we listened. And we learned. And we got here. So what we did then with those other stakeholders that he mentioned is that we allowed for testing with a lot of pessimism until we were proved wrong. I remember in the test phase, we asked them to use water in a very remote area, which is very wide open. The only existing thing was trees, forests. It was honestly very unfair to us. Now when I look backward and where they have reached, we should have allowed them to fly over the city. Now the bottom line is people fear the unknown, and we shall continue to fear the unknown until we overcome it. So here we are. We have got we worked as guinea pigs for good reasons, and we have shared our regulation, the legal framework that governs the use of unmanned aircraft systems, to our regional bloc of 6 countries in the East African region. We have got an RSO called CASOA. So we have shared with them this template. And all our neighbors are working towards making use of it. We have seen the operator who is working with us relocating to West Africa in Ghana, where they have opened a branch. And I know they are going to some other countries very soon. So we are not complaining about being guinea pigs. We are only celebrating having taken the lead, and it's working. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rudahemuka. My next question will be for Ms. Guignon. What challenges you had to overcome to be where you are right now, and what new challenges do you foresee in the future?
Okay. The Saffron Group is a very large group, 90,000 people in the world, in 30 different countries, 340 locations, and 21 billion euro revenue. I'm just giving these numbers not to say we're big and it's great. It's just to give you an idea of the kind of, I'm talking about a big group and what challenges are the challenges of a big group. The challenges of a big group are not the same challenges as those of a startup, obviously. I have 4 challenges. The first one is it's something that is, to make a little bit of history, the Saffron Group is based initially, in the beginning, thanks to a partnership. It's our partnership with General Electric. This partnership with General Electric, it's a joint venture. It's called CFM International, and it allowed us to enter the business of civil aircraft engines. Before that, we were only doing the military aircraft engines, and we were doing the aircraft engines of the Dassault. So Dassault was our only customer. It was a military customer. We still love Dassault very much, but we were very happy to be able to enter the civil market in the 70s. And so this was a real venture, and being in a partnership is a challenge in itself. Sometimes you think that it's easier to work on your own, and I think that General Electric and Safran today can say that thanks to this partnership, we have made the most sold aircraft engine in the history, which is the CFM56, which is #1 in single-aisle aircraft. So a partnership is one of the reasons for our success. The second challenge is, of course, the technology edge. I already mentioned that. So keeping really always at the edge of the technology is what makes us continue being here today. So I will not develop it too much. So technology, innovation. If you are interested in seeing some of those technologies, we have a booth, the Safran booth, and you can see movies and examples of our technology innovations. Another challenge, which is quite recent in the history of the group, is to be able to support the ramp-up of the LEAP. So the LEAP is the new engine which we make with General Electric, which is the successor of the CFM56, and it's an engine that powers Airbus, Boeing, and will power the COMAC aircraft. We had, thanks to our success and thanks to our very honored customers, Airbus and Boeing, we had to face an unprecedented ramp-up. We have to go from 200 engines, LEAP engines, in 2016 to 2,000 in 2020. This ramp-up represents doing in 5 years what we did in 30 years on the previous engine. And this kind of challenge is really a question of working, having an industrial maturity, and working very much with all our supply chain. That's so that's also something very important. And we are just about to meet the challenge. And the last challenge I would like to mention, which is also a success, Safran has known how to grow by mergers and acquisitions. We have grown from a much smaller group in 30 years ago. The latest acquisition we did was last year, 2018, when we integrated in our group Zodiac Aerospace. Zodiac Aerospace represented more than half of our initial size. So Zodiac Aerospace were 32,000 people, and at that time Safran was 58,000 people. And we integrated this beautiful company. We are very proud of having them now on board, and they are doing all the aircraft interiors and safety systems. So these are the 4 challenges that we are happy we have met.
Thank you, Ms. Guignon. My next question is for Mr. Parny. What do we need to easily enable innovation in aviation? What are the biggest challenges in adopting innovation?
So, business aviation is something, a paradox. On the one hand, it's a long cycle business requiring long-term vision and planning, in particular for developing new technologies that will come into play 10 or 15 years down the road. But it is also subject to unforeseen economic and political changes that can easily upset the most carefully crafted plans. So we should address this paradox carefully, and we need to be very agile, reactive, and on the cutting edge. This is the first challenge in terms of organization and workforce. As for commercial aircraft, we operate in a very competitive environment with investments that are very heavy, and we need to have a good anticipatory view of the regulation to come and their potential evolution. And these difficulties are even increased in our sector, where production rates are very small compared to commercial aircraft. The series are lower, making it more difficult to introduce new technologies at an acceptable price for the final customer. We have also, in another hand, a problem to manage, a problem of image. Business jet is sometimes seen by the public as the plane for rich people, while it is for the vast majority of the customer a working tool. So we have to manage that and to communicate well to the general public. So in this particular concept, our challenges are two different type of challenges. First one is, as I said before, to communicate, to explain what we are doing, working on improving our products in order to have something very efficient. The interest of our products for the general economy. Just, this is a challenge in terms of communication. And in another hand, as far as the regulator is concerned, we need to have a good anticipatory view of the regulation to come and make sure they are well adapted to our specificities. For example, and in particular, we must be careful not to directly transpose certain regulation established for commercial aviation directly to business jet without taking into account our specificities. Our concept of operation is very different, so we have specificities and the optimization point is not always the same, so we have to take into account that. We need also to be sure that the new regulation is really efficient and not only a communication tool, which by definition may not be sustainable. And we should have also a global approach, ensure that new regulation doesn't fight against one already existing. For example, if you want to improve acoustics or if you want to reduce fuel emission, CO2 emission, it doesn't work always in the same direction. So we have to make clear choices. And we have also to have regulation that ensure the consistency between all components of the global systems, the aircraft itself, but also the ground facilities, so in order to take full benefit of all these innovation. So this was my conclusion on this subject.
Thank you, Mr. Parny. My last question will be for Director General, Mr. Udahemuka. In the context of innovation, what are for you the key elements states and international organizations should be involved in?
Thank you very much. First of all, we shouldn't allow as governments and regulators to be left behind and outpaced by innovators, because it's a disservice to these innovators. We need to keep the pace. We need to be looked at as facilitators, not frustrators of the industry. The other thing is governments should endeavor to have regulations that don't sit docile until they are outdated. You know, what happens then in our contemporary way of doing things is we have a regulation that will be crafted, that will be approved, that will stay and stay and stay, and we find it very hard to actually match it with the economies and innovations that are evolving very fast. So we should learn to pick up on the pace. The other thing is governments and international organizations that are involved in regulatory should make sure that they adequately finance and train the inspectors, their staff, to match with the skills and the knowledge that is coming about in this digital era. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Udahemuka, and thank you to all our great panelists for those very insightful opinions and views. Please let us give them a round of applause. This concludes our second workshop. The next workshop will start at 2:10. Thank you and enjoy your lunch, kindly sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Aviation in Nigeria. Thank you, everyone.